My name is Stephanie Moon Reynolds. However, legal name Stephanie Moon, and I'm running for mayor of Roanoke City.
Great. And can you tell us just briefly your background?
Background in personal, grew up here, 66 years. Grew up in Southwest City on 1500 block. Kirk Park Elementary School is where I call my stomping ground. Moved to Northwest at the age of 14, where I have lived since. I raised 3 children on 10th Street. For 40 years, owned a house, then moved over in the Williamson Road area, where I have been for 16 years.
Excellent.
Now, career-wise, totally different story there.
Sure, if you want to just touch on
I
that.
started working for the city at the age of 19 in November of 1977, was permanent in the city clerk's office in 1978, where I did my entire career with the city of Roanoke, worked in the city clerk's office entry level, all the way up to city clerk, where I retired after 14 years as city clerk in 2019, working for 5 mayors and working for 6 city managers. So I feel I'm well equipped. In being on council, ran for my first council term as a nonpartisan, independent, and I'm finishing up my first term.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about why do you want to be Roanoke's next mayor?
I want to be Roanoke's next mayor because I look at what's going on in the city. Again, have been for 46 years. And over those years, you can see the good, and then you can see where it started to trend down. Excuse me. And part of that, I think, has been tenure, the knowledge. Those that came on council in the past years, the first 25 years, was probably, I would say, business-minded, economic development, looking at things that needed to be done, parks and rec. And then the next 20 years, you start seeing more personal agendas. And my being the clerk, I started to see that as, well, I primarily started seeing that in 2000 when I came deputy. And I was able to be in meetings, and you're working more with management. You started to see the shift. You started to see it even in the mayors as they came on. When I saw Ralph Smith, Ralph was a good mayor. He didn't do much, but he was a quiet mayor. And then we had C. Nelson Harris. Mayor Harris was there when I was clerk. I thought he was a good mayor. He cared about the people. He was more of a quiet one too. He didn't do much outreach in the community, but he did meet the people, and he was concerned about the citizenry. And then we got David back, and I saw a shift. And then I saw Sherman Lee come on. And I believe Sherman has done the best he can, and I'm not taking anything from him. But I don't think there was strong leadership with him. He started seeing others came in, they had their own ideas, so he wasn't a good guidance in helping to navigate them. And they were all new. And then I looked down at what the administration had. We had 2 new managers that had come through, and the tenure was leaving from the management office. Sherman Stovall, Brian Townsend was looking to leave. And then on and on and on. And I got to thinking, what's going to happen to this city when I leave? There's no institutional knowledge, not on council, with just Mayor Lee having the tenure. Bill Bestpitch had tenure, but I'll leave that alone. And so I just felt that I thought I needed to be part of what was going on in the city. So I ran for the council office. And 2 years in, I started to see more work that needed to be done. And there was no knowledge, no history, nothing to help navigate from the council appointed offices down into the management. There was no one with knowledge, and they were not listening to the people. There was no voices being heard. It was a one-party thing, and I didn't think that was right. We had to represent all. So with that, I said, I think I need to look to run for mayor. Either I get it to help move the city forward. I don't have a hidden agenda. I care. My record speaks for that. My tenure with the city itself. I said, look at that and run on that basis. And so I did.
Well, let's talk policy priorities.
Okay.
If you're elected, what's one of the first actions you would push for city council to take?
Action wise, well, before I even do action, I would like to sit down and talk with the 3 incoming council members. And that would be before you take your seat in January because of what the law says you can only talk with one being mayor. And sit down and talk with them and help them to understand policy, understand what the procedures are when you're in a council meeting. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. And also look at our rules of procedure. This is how we perform our duties. One of the acts I would do is I would sit down with management because we're going to have a new manager. And I would say, let's get a financial consultant in here because we as council need to know where are we in our finances, not what the manager tells us, but really hearing it from a professional, a consultant who does this kind of work. And I don't mean Brown and Edwards, I don't mean Davenport, but get an actual consultant, one that can facilitate and say, this is where you all are at. These are what you should be looking to spend. You are really at the top of your debt policy. So this is, help cut away some of your fat, I would call it, so that we can take care of the basic needs, look at programs, and look at salaries. Where is it we need to change some things? That's one of the actions I would be willing to take.
So the mayor is only one vote of the 7-person council. How do you persuade other members to agree to your proposals?
You look at, for me, again, I have to go back to Noah Taylor's time when I first came in and the curiosity was there and you were fresh, you were young, and you was really interested in what went on in your city. You would look to talk with them. I would like to meet with them on a regular basis to kind of navigate the waters. Although you're one vote, you're still the mayor. And you should have some kind of leadership in navigating that. And that's what I would look at when we look at our agenda. You call them up and talk about the items that's on your agenda. And you help talk about what is it you would like to see. That's where that time comes in December. What is it you really want to see? And if it's really a hard lift, talk about how hard that lift is really going to be. And are you really going to have that support? I don't have what I call any platform or priorities. I have focus areas, what I'm looking to focus on. These are things that are doable, that need to be done. And I believe that council as a whole, we can move those things forward because it's for the betterment of the city and for the citizens.
Mm-hmm. What are those focus areas?
One is such as safety and security. Mm-hmm. We look at that. You look at economic growth. Let's look at community outreach. Look at education and lifelong learning. Those things, they kind of go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So you're working with your departments and you're working with your citizens. My logo is Voices Heard because I believe in hearing your voice, and that comes from the community. And Hands to Serve, that comes from the community too. We've all got something to contribute. How do we come to the table and discuss that, not at an hour, but an ongoing discussion of what do we need to see? If a citizen comes with an idea, let's talk about it. But don't look at me and say, this is something you need to do. No, it's something we need to do. Then we need to look at how can we make that happen. But it's got to be for the betterment of the city, not for a privileged group. But I look at the underserved, I look at the marginalized. How is this going to impact them? Is it going to be good for them? Is it going to lift them up? And if it is, then that's something we should push for and work together on.
So Roanoke's residential neighborhoods remain highly racially segregated. What role should city government play in dismantling that legacy?
That's a hard thing to do because we are segregated by pretty much almost by choice. And then again, if you look at income basis, if they don't have the income, How can they move into another neighborhood? So Roanoke's northwest section has always been, from segregation on, pretty much low income, except for when you get out toward the upper northwest, then the income levels change. So that's where we're at. We've got to do better with workforce development with our northwest segregated piece, even with Southeast, where you have lower marginalized whites. So it's segregated because of the housing structure. They're older houses, so they're more rental property. When you look at 47, 48% rental, it's in the inner city piece, and they belong to either slum landlords or absentee landlords. So until you're able to build them up, put laws to make them do, then you're going to always continue to be segregated, because the people can afford to move up unless we really, it's part of my economic growth. When I look at that, workforce development, what are we doing to help build them up? Better jobs. We talk about better jobs. But in that, what do we mean by better? Even if you look at Amazon coming, nothing precludes them from hiring outside of the city. What incentives are we putting to make sure our citizens get employed, that the money stay inside the city to grow the revenue, to help grow the people? And until we can align that in a way with business, job, economic growth, we're going to continue to stay where we're at, stagnant.
Mm-hmm. That was something, the Amazon deal that came in while you were on council. Was there ever conversations about conditions, though? Or that
No, there was nothing ever mentioned, but I have always said it. And what you hear is, by law, you can't prevent people from being hired. But if you think about where it's located, it's near the Roanoke County side, it's near Bonsack. It's down that way. You're probably going to pull more people that way. We need to look at transportation. Even if we are able to hire our citizens, and most of them are going to be the marginalized, how are they going to get there? Unless we do a better job. We're doing okay, and it's okay to toot your horn. But I was secretary to GRTC when no one talks about this, when there was a public hearing held, and citizens from Southeast, Northeast, they came and they shared their thoughts, such as, I would like to go to the movies, but the bus stops running. I would like to take a friend on a date. I don't own a car. I would have to use transportation. I should not have to look at my watch wondering am I going to catch the last bus. So I do look at Roanoke and remember times gone by when I used to ride the bus back in the early 80s before I started driving. The bus ran to nighttime. You were able to go to work if you worked the third shift. Not anymore, it's off, and you've got to figure out how to get back to work. So I look at, if we're serious about bringing in jobs, securing jobs for the citizens who are the underserved, who don't own a car, and we're pushing for that kind of transportation, various modes, bicycles, walking, what have you, then we've got to do a better job here in the largest city in Southwest Virginia. And look at our bus system. We just got to do better with that.
Mm-hmm. You have been on council about a full 4-year term. Looking back over your time in office, what is your proudest accomplishment? And why would that not have happened had you not been on city council?
Proudest accomplishment. I think one thing I'm proud of, and it took some push, and there may be others, but I don't celebrate like some would. I just do what I have to do and I get out of the way. So that's a hard question for me. One thing that I look back on, and it was an accomplishment. I've had a couple of accomplishments. When I came on council, I talked about the overgrowth. I talked about the blight. And here we are in my last year, and I don't know if it's because others are running for the seat, that now we want to lift them up to get the seats per se, that we are looking at safety. Mine was safety. When I came on, I looked at the safety. I looked at the overgrown lots. And I was saying even then, why aren't we making these lots more presentable? The overgrowth, looking at the blight, put lights up. When I was campaigning in 2020, that's what I kept hearing. I don't like living next door, and I feel unsafe in this sense because people are doing drugs or selling drugs over here in this overgrowth lot. So I would always push for that, and that's code enforcement. And it would got to be a challenge. They would tell me that we gotta cite the owner, we gotta go to court, those kinds of things. And I asked the question: do you have a registry? These same lots you keep cutting, you know you're going to have to cut, or these same buildings you keep citing the owners on. Why don't you have a registry so that you know this is going to happen? You can stay in front of it. Now we're doing it. But I'm not out tooting my horn to say, look what I did, look what I did. I'm not that person. Just as long as you're doing what you need to do. I don't care about the credit. The other thing is I looked at the tax freeze for the disabled and the elderly. And because the veterans, again, I was still clerk when we did the one for the veterans. I was proud of that because I saw other localities. I was the president of the association, and I was seeing that down in Virginia Beach. I talked with Dan Callahan about that one, and we had to do some research on it, but it worked. And I hear now, even with doing the one for the city, how much money that would take away from the revenue. To me, these are seniors. These are people who have paid for their homes. They deserve on these fixed salaries. They're not getting any more money. They deserve to have a break. And we were able to go up to $51,000. The county, I believe, was $53,000. But the threshold on it now is, I believe, according to Lou Pretty, when he was talking about what the General Assembly did, is $85,000. That's something that sounds like it would work for the citizens, the seniors, those that are on fixed income, who could have their taxes freeze, especially since we keep going up because the market, basically it's the market. We could reduce the real estate tax, but you're only reducing it by $5 million at best. And the average citizen like me, you're gonna only save $25 to $55. Do you really wanna go through that? But if the money is really helping to serve the citizens, then we need to support that. But at the same time, where can we offset it? And for me, that's one place we can. So I am proud that I'm making headways with that. With that initiative, and I just want to see more of that when I become mayor.
Got you. You have been critical of the city's Gun Violence Prevention Commission, at one point suggesting it should be abolished. Now you serve on the commission. Do you believe any of your past criticism was misplaced?
No, I'm on it for that reason. When we got to looking at what the Gun Violence Commission, and again, I had to look back, and I think the purpose was not the purpose. It's like it came up to be an initiative, but then you didn't sit down, you didn't talk it through. The right people were not at the table. It was kind of like, this is what we want to do. No real research in it until later on. I know for a fact that there was one from a locality that was willing to help drive it, to give you some insight. The commission refused to listen because they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And no one really understood. And I have heard this now, that a commission going after money should not be. And as you see, we went all the way back around. And what happened? If I wasn't telling the truth or making sense, common sense prevailing, why did we do another measure to set in all of these recommendations to try to align it so it can make sense. Which I still looked at and said no, because even now I'm on it, and Joe and I, the vice mayor, and I are just liaisons, no voting. So I attend because I do want to hear what you've got to say. I still sit there and I still shake my head. The meetings I have gone to in the last 2 months, I may as well, for transparency, I have not attended. It's not that I don't think it's important. I've had other things on the plate that have kept me from coming. But I do like what Chief Booth has brought to the table. That has helped elevate the Gun Violence Commission, because now with him, unlike the former city manager, he is more or less bringing things in. We have under the Attorney General, you have another person who's also working as the gun violence intervention coordinator. So people are coming in place. It has nothing to do with the commission. It's just that now you're finding ways to combat gun violence. And you need to stop calling it gun violence. There's all kinds of violence. If we really look at what the chief of police puts on the table when he comes to council, we look at rape, you look at assault, you look at domestic violence. All of that still plays into violence. But we want to elevate gun violence. And I just, even in the title of gun violence intervention, prevention, I just think we need to even look at that and take the gun out of it. Because to me, we're elevating it and we're promoting you to tote a gun. We need to back it up. And that's where the safety and, for me, and security comes in. How do you make the citizens feel secure, or residents feel secure, if you're always talking gun violence? Let's talk about the good things. Let's celebrate them. When the chief of police presented out and he said, we were, as of today, the date when he presented, we had 24 last year. We were at 20 this year, 4 down less. I like numbers. Yet you also say 66%. To me, that's misguided, because 66% gives you an idea like it's way up and we have really dropped. I would rather hear we're 4 down, because Lord forbid, if you have another one come in, what does that percentage do to you? So I would rather do that. So am I still a little comprehensive about or hesitating about the Gun Violence Commission? To an extent, I don't think it should be a permanent commission, because that tells me that we're looking at it, it's going to always be here. We're never going to bring it down. And I would like, it needs to be a quasi, it just needs to be advisory.
It has, as you know, gun violence has gone down considerably over the past year. Do you think the commission bears any credit for that? The work that they've, or grants that they've brought?
The grants that they have brought primarily came through, and they have to come through the city. So I'm not going to give credit there. I'm going to put the credit where the credit is due. It belongs under the administration. Now, I would say the commission, I was in one of the meetings, you need to have metrics to know who to give them to. Now, some of them you've given to help give them a leg up. Yes, it has helped, but the money really funnels through the city. I know they'll try to get money, and that's okay, but at the end of the day, the money still has to come through the city, and the city really should be the ones who have an oversight of the funds, because I was the one that called out better agreements, who the Gun Violence Commission gave money to, who had not completed what their purpose, their mission. And they had to pay back $22,000 when they were given a $32,000 grant. So to me, you don't have the oversight or the wherewithal. It still comes under the city.
Mm-hmm. You can often be the lone dissenting vote on city council. If elected mayor, do you think that will change?
I think it will, because you're getting a different a caliber of people who have, some of them do have the heart of the city, and I can name all the way down. If Evelyn Powers makes it, she's coming with 43 years, and she's got tenure as 20 of that is treasurer. So she's going to help balance that budget piece when we talk about money, where the money's coming from. How do we see that? If I look at Terry McGuire, he talks more about the heat, the resiliency. He talks about recreation. So you get that too, which I am for, youth. Building up our youth. What do we do with our youth? I think it also would give Vivian Sanchez Jones a little bit more of a voice, because she'll have some support there for the youth, looking at the schools. What do we want to do about the schools? I think that's going to play a role in where we are at. And if you get Jim Garrett, some may think, he's up there and he's way out there, he's conservative. But to me, Jim Garrett makes sense. He makes a lot of sense. And that's what I love about being nonpartisan, is I listen to what people are saying. Now, some things he may say don't, but for me overall, but I do think, again, coming in and talking with the three, and we all looking at what are we really here for? Are we here for our own selves to get our name put on something? Are we really here to work hard for the people? Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to come out. Even the people are going to cry out if it's not.
Mm-hmm. You talk about, representing the people and being for the people on sort of hot button issues where residents speak out. How do you distinguish between what may be a vocal minority and what may be a vocal majority?
I look at what they're saying. I go to see one of the examples. Let's talk about when we did the coffee pot. The coffee fish burn. With that one, I changed my vote. I listened to those that didn't want anything done in the park. I did have concerns with the city wanting to sell off property. And I told them then, I can accept if all we are letting them use is this area where the cottage is, the Fishburne Cottage. I said, I think I could work with that. And also, it had a good meaning behind it. It had some support. What people were saying, if you walk the Greenway, wouldn't it be nice? So I looked at that ambiance with that, and I said, that makes good sense. Because then I heard the others, and it was primarily two that were the loudest for the minority. And I appreciate it, and I understand where they were coming from, but I looked at on the other side, and I was really hearing the voices of what would be good for that community. So I went with that. And then I can come back around when I looked at Brandon, the rezoning from Fralin. I didn't like it because of the traffic. I understand, and I felt, and I went over there, and I really felt that the community's voice needed to be heard in that one. Now, let me shift. The last one we just did, Medmont. I did talk with the citizens there. I felt their pain, and I was all in. And then I did the research from the top of the up at the beginning of Medmont and near Keggy. And I talked with a couple of the adjoining property owners at the top. I talked to the ones that went around that abutted it. They had some concerns, but really not enough to say, it really bothers me. And when I talked with 3 planners, not in the city, that had expertise, that I sent this information to and said, is this not a good project? And I was told it was. And when I looked at what Mr. Boone was doing with his project, and he was selling, he wasn't renting, he was selling, and they were 350 up. I said, this is not going to bring prices down. And plus, it's away from before you get into the Medmont area. And I even called some of them back to tell them that I was 80% certain that I was going to go another way. And I just had to get the other 20% to do it. And they were respectful because I came and told them. They didn't feel like I betrayed them on the dais and just flipped my vote. I wanted them to know, and that was a promise I have kept, that whichever way I go, I will let you know which way I'm leaning before I take that vote. So yeah.
Couple fun questions here for
Okay.
you, including a standard. You're going out to dinner in Roanoke. Name one place. Where do you go?
Downtown, I go to Billy's. I like to eat at Billy's. I love their lamb, rack of lamb. If I'm eating hamburgers, I tend to go over at, I used to eat at 50, a table 51. I used to love to eat there back before COVID. I don't usually eat too much out, but if husband really wants to take me out, I usually would say, take me down to Billy's. And I like to eat at Martin's when I'm eating at lunchtime. I used to eat at Lenore's a lot. And now Lenore's is closed, so you go, dang, now I got to find somewhere else to eat.
Have you been to the City Hall cafeteria?
Yes,
It's
I've
pretty
been
good.
in. It's pretty
And
good.
it's affordable.
I keep missing. I go in looking for breakfast, and they go,
Oh, yeah.
"We're not serving breakfast. You just missed it 20 minutes ago." And I go, "I got to get on schedule here."
Yeah, I need to try that like $2 BLT or $3.
Yeah.
Finally, what books are on your nightstand? What are you reading currently?
What do I read? I have, it's hard for me to really read because my eyes get tired, but I have so many books. I've got 2 books that were written by the Gun Violence Intervention Coordinator. I call him a coordinator in Danville. He wrote 2 books. One is Gangs and it's 2 G's. I've read it and I'm reading it again. The best book I read, I have to be honest, is I read the Bible. But I listen to the Bible on my phone, so I don't read a lot. Most of my reading is things that deal with counsel. There's no books. I'm always reading reports. I'm always researching because I'm looking for what you haven't told me.
Great. Well, thank you very much.